Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our book of the week, which is This Woven Kingdom by Taherah Mafi. First, this is a spoiler-free section, so if you haven't read this book yet, don't worry about it, it won't be spoiled for you here. There will be some spoiler-related things that I want to discuss, but that'll be later on in the video and you will get plenty of warning. If you'd like to join in on any of the book discussions, send me your thoughts, comments, or even a short video clip of you discussing the book, then I'll list the next upcoming 4 books in the description below. So I have read a few of Taherah Mafi's books before, mostly from the Shatter Me series, and while I did enjoy them for what they were, I think I'm like 3 or 4 books in, they were quite naive, even for a YA, so I was really curious to see how this Woven Kingdom would compare. And I'll be honest, this is a completely different writing style. It's more lyrical and dense and atmospheric, and while that does work for some readers, it just wasn't really for me. I rated this book 2.5 stars, and honestly I think I was being quite kind because I did appreciate the originality and the effort that has clearly gone into building this very interesting fantasy world. I think it will absolutely work for the right reader, especially if you like a more poetic writing style and a slow burn story, but for me it just didn't click. Okay, so here's a quick overview of the plot, still no spoilers. But Eliza is a servant with a big secret. She's hiding in plain sight, blending into the backgrounds of a kingdom that would kill her if only they knew the truth. Cameron is a crown prince destined for duty and power, but when he starts to notice Eliza, things begin to unravel. There's a prophecy and a looming war, and 2 lives that have been pulled together by fate and danger. If I had to compare this to any other book, I would probably say Throne of Glass because the hidden identity, the political intrigue, and then the royal characters, but I might also say Heavenly Bodies, but more for the romance and the tension. I would also say Trial of the Sun Queen because of the slow burn pacing and the character dynamics. That being said, none of them really share the same sort of writing style. This is a lot more lyrical, just something to keep in mind. So if you are expecting something much more straightforward, like those comparisons, then it might not be for you. I was really hoping that this would become a new favourite, and I do like it when authors step into new territory and try different styles, and I do respect Mafi for doing that here, but it just didn't come together for me in a way that I'd hoped. The story itself is actually a really interesting concept. I think it's inspired by Persian mythology, and it has hidden identities, forbidden romance, and political intrigue, which usually are things that I love, but for some reason I just struggled to connect with the characters or the story. My attention just kept drifting, and I found myself zoning out and having to reread pages, and just overall not caring much about what was happening. I think that was the biggest issue for me. I wanted to be pulled in by this world, but just never found myself invested. The characters all felt quite distant, and while the writing was beautiful at times, it felt a little bit like style over substance, and it was hard to get emotionally invested. The romance was a big element to the story, and it had a classic forbidden romance dynamic, which I do usually really enjoy. But for me, there just wasn't enough development or chemistry early on. It sort of felt like they were attracted to one another because the story needed them to be, rather than anything that grew naturally between them. And here's the thing, I've been sitting here trying to come up with more things to say about the book, but honestly, I feel like I can barely remember anything about it. And I guess it just sort of shows how little an impact it had on me. I was reading the words, but I wasn't emotionally or mentally invested in what was happening. And that's not to say that the writing was bad, it just didn't resonate. The characters didn't grab me, the stakes never really felt urgent, and the romance didn't feel developed or tense enough to keep me hooked. I'd find myself zoning out and having to reread entire pages, and even then nothing really stuck. I almost feel like it's worse than just outright disliking a book, because I just sort of feel indifferent. So as for the question, would I recommend the book? That depends. If you love a slower, more lyrical fantasy, then this one might be your thing. But if you're like me and you need tighter pacing and a stronger emotional arc, then you might struggle with this one. And will I be reading any more by Taherah Mafi? If the question was, will I be continuing with this series, then probably not. However, I have read books by this author that I have enjoyed, so I wouldn't be opposed to reading more by them. So earlier on in the video, I said that you would get plenty of warning for any upcoming spoilers. This is that moment, so if you haven't read this book yet, I would suggest going doing that first, because beyond this point, there will definitely be spoilers. So some of the bigger elements, like Eliza's true identity and the ending confrontation, I should have found a lot more exciting. However, by the time that we got there, I was that disconnected that it didn't hit me as hard as it should have. Cameron's character did have potential, but I honestly didn't understand his motives other than the very classic duty versus attraction conflict. Like, he's meant to be this crown prince who's torn between his responsibilities and his own feelings, and he doesn't feel that layered. He just sort of feels like a spoiled prince who has had a moral awakening after locking eyes with a pretty girl. And that might sound harsh, but I just didn't buy the emotional depth of it. I mean, yes, I did feel bad for him, especially with the scenes with his grandfather, because he was horrible. You can tell that he's trying to do better and see the humanity in others, but at the same time, it just kind of felt surface level. It's not like I disliked him, I just didn't really care, and I think that that's part of my bigger problem with the book overall. These characters are meant to make you feel something, whether it's longing, empathy, excitement, but for me, it never really went beyond being an interesting concept. Eliza was interesting conceptually, but she also just felt too passive for the majority of the book. Like, I just kept waiting for her to take charge of the situation, and by the time that she did, it just felt a little bit too late for me to care. It didn't feel like there was much to the romance, and it never really won me over, despite the fact that it's meant to be quite a big part of the plot. That being said, I did like the mythology influence and this broader world that the author is building. There's definitely room for the story to expand, and I could see the other books potentially exploring more of the interesting political and magical dynamics. But ultimately, this book just didn't hold my attention in the way that I had hoped it would, and maybe it's just wrong reader, right book sort of situation, because I can see why people love this book. But for someone like me who needs to feel connected to the characters and needs to be pulled in by the pace, then I just don't think it works. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book? Next week, we're discussing The Gifted Chain by B.H. Gorden, so don't forget to get your thoughts and comments in by Sunday the 17th of August at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram or Discord. The following week will be one day, but don't forget if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list next 4 books down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, it's always appreciated. And I will see you next week. Bye. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message.